Good morning. My name is Sterling Higa, Chairperson of the Authority. I'd now like to call to order the May 7th, 2025 Kakaako Authority meeting of the Hawaii Community Development Authority. The time is now 9 a.m.
Chair, in accordance with section 92-3.7 Hawaii revised statutes, the Hawaii Community Development Authority is holding today's Kakaako board meeting virtually on Zoom. The Zoom link details were included on the meeting agenda. Therefore, members of the public are welcome to join us on Zoom and also at our physical meeting location at 547 Queen Street, second floor boardroom, Honolulu, Hawaii, 96813. The HCDA communications staff is hosting the meeting. Once this meeting begins, everyone will be muted for clear audio. Board members, if you have any comments or questions, please unmute yourselves to speak. It is important that all individuals clearly state their name, pseudonym, or other identifier name each time prior to speaking. If you wish to provide oral testimony and you are attending virtually, please indicate so by clicking the raise hand button found on your Zoom screen. If you are attending in person, you'll be called to the front of the room in the order that you signed up. All testimony will be limited to a maximum of 2 minutes. Your testimony must be related to an item on the agenda. Before you begin your testimony, ask that you identify yourself, spell your name for the record. When 1 minute is remaining, your names will be called out. When 30 seconds remaining will be called out. When time has elapsed, time will be called, after which you'll have 30 seconds to conclude your testimony. Then your audio will be turned on. If you're attending in person, the presiding officer will call the next testifier. Keep in mind that this is an opportunity to share your thoughts with us. If you ask questions during your testimony, neither the board nor the staff is required to provide an answer. If the authority's connection for the remote meeting is lost, the meeting will be recessed until the connection is restored. If the connection cannot be restored within 30 minutes, the meeting will be terminated and the authority will continue the meeting at another notice date. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Craig. HCDA board members, please remain visible and audible during the meeting. Also, please acknowledge you are present by either saying here or present. Let the record reflect that the following members are present. Vice Chair Ishii is excused. Secretary Lidstone.
Ale.
Thank you. Member Miranda Johnson is excused. Member Anderson.
Yeah.
Thank you. Member Evans is just walked into the room. Member Streitz.
Here.
Thank you. Member Chinau.
Here.
You and Member Sakota.
Here. Good morning.
Thank you.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. For today's board meeting, board members will have an opportunity to ask questions or provide comments after an agenda item has been presented. Individuals from the public who have requested to provide verbal public testimony on a specific agenda item are on standby and will be permitted to provide their testimony respectively. Moving to agenda item number 2, these are the approval of the minutes. These are the regular meeting minutes of April 2nd, 2025. Board members, are there any comments or corrections to these minutes? Seeing none, the minutes are approved as presented. Agenda item number 3, for information and discussion, this is an update by HCDA staff on performance metrics for the Honuakaha Senior Rental Housing Project located at 545 Queen Street, Honolulu, Hawaii, 96813. Mr. Garrett Sasaki, Chief Financial Officer, will now present the update. Mr. Sasaki.
Chair, if I may,
Please.
Before Garrett presents the update on these metrics, I wanted to just provide some sort of opening remarks about context. So the dashboard that you see here is sort of a dashboard that was suggested by a prior chair to provide the board with a high level financial and other metrics for Honuakaha. As a lot of you know, HCDA is a general partner in the limited partnership that owns the senior rental side of the Honuakaha. And as all of you know, numbers and financials, tell a story. These numbers are kind of a partial story because there are other metrics that are not included in this that maybe tell the complete story. When we retained Market Development Corporation, MDI, about 1.5 years ago, I think it was a significant step in the operations of the senior rental project was significant because I think we needed to make a change. In the year and a half, MDI has made some progress on the operations. And this is in large part due to the work that Garrett, Lindsay, and Marie have been doing, overseeing MDI. Do a lot of, dogged the directors and suggestions and oversight. But even a year and a half later, there's still a lot more that can be done by MDI to improve operations of the senior rental. I mean, they need a little bit more work. So that's sort of the, overall arching comments on this dashboard. And I'll be open for questions, and then Garrett will now kind of go into the specifics of the metrics and provide that to you. And then Garrett and I will be both available for questions, Chair.
Great. Thank you, Director Nakamoto.
Okay, so
Mr. Sasaki.
diving in, last update was shared February 5 of this year. That update was trying to recap all of 2024. So, hopefully up to that point, we're okay, the information was shared. This is looking at the first quarter of 25, so January through March. We tried to present this in a budget to actual, so there's some way to, identify variances and, focus on those items instead of, line by line on a financial statement. So income overall was down. That's a direct relationship to the amount of vacancies. It's on the income. On the expense, it's a little bit higher, but if you remember at the last staff report, we reported the available cash balance for renovations. So the operator, MDI, has commenced those renovations. That's basically that 100,000 overage of expenses. And net, you see we're at a net deficit of 230,000, but the property started the year with a little bit over 500,000 in cash. So there's still cash available for day-to-day bills. Tenant receivable, 150,000, very big number. We identified tenants that are delinquent. We are working with MDI to start the collection process, to take the next steps in clearing the receivables. We know the numbers of pretty substantial number based on a $1,000 a month rent. And how many individuals that adds up to.
Chair, may I ask a follow-up question?
Are you ready for
Yes.
questions? Yeah, sure. Board members, Member Evans.
Are the tenants that are in arrears making partial payments based on their income?
No.
No.
There's a mix, right? So there's several tenants that might be 1 or 2 months behind. They kind of catch up. It works out. There's about 6 that are pretty severely delinquent. I think maybe through the change of the resident manager or something, they kind of lose track and the next person resumes, and although meanwhile the tenant's not paying. So it adds up to this amount, but now we have a good report, good list, and we will monitor those tenants.
Thank you, Chair.
Chair, if I may add, I think, Member Evans, if this were another demographic that we're dealing with in a commercial rental building, the possibility of catching up with some of those delinquencies may be better. In a demographic like this, where we'll have fixed incomes that are also probably on the lower side.
Right.
It's worrisome that if you have a 2-month delinquency or 3-month delinquency, that's a lot to catch up on. And so I'm concerned about that. And the recourse for that kind of delinquency is not very good. I mean, that is, the alternatives are not very favorable to anybody. Or,
Condo associations that, do not have, this demographic often use short pay or auto pay to make it easier for their tenants, owners or renters to, make those payments. Is that a possibility for, these tenants?
Yes, substantially all of them are on an auto payment structure.
Right.
Even the ones that are delinquent might have it, but you know, if their account doesn't have sufficient balance, you know, it won't go through, so we have to now go case by case.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Evans.
Yeah.
Board members, any other comments or questions for Garrett?
There's one more section to cover off.
Oh,
It'll
yep.
lead also into the next agenda
Yep.
item that Executive Director Nakamoto will cover, but it's the occupancy. 123 units are occupied. There's 9 that are rent ready. There's about 9 applications in the pipeline also. So hopefully it's a timing thing and they'll be moved in very shortly. The other 18 need rehab, various degrees, but it's various degrees from moderate to extensive rehabilitation. We'll get into that after. Other than that, the audit has commenced. Hopefully we get a report in June of this year. Following that is the tax return, which we estimate being completed in August. This year, we will stay on top of it from there. Second page kind of talks about, you know, explaining some of the variances and occupancy status. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Board members, any comments or questions?
I have a, oh, sorry.
Member Sakota, and then we'll go to Member Schultz.
Okay. You know, the numbers are a little bit worrisome, and one of the concerns I have is that there's no viable resolution to getting out of this, except for getting rid of the asset. Because it's kind of feeling like it's a social services program type of thing turning into. So I'm wondering what your perspective is on sort of managing it into the future, because I mean, just basically we're faced with renovation expenses with the outlook of renting it to tenants that might not be capable of actually making payments, timely payments. So if you could just comment on what our strategy is going forward. I know we're trying to get rid of the property, but how to manage that deficit going into the future.
Can I just add this? So in the short term, it's just to remind the on-site property manager to be more attentive to tenant delinquencies. You know, not to go back in time, but if some of these units were being worked on over time, they would be ready to move in, people would be in there. You know, we're fixing that through the additional funds that we receive. So that'll clear that backlog. On the delinquencies applications, it needs to be a consistent person that's looking at the report on a monthly basis and sending reminders or collecting on a monthly basis. I think with the change from the previous, like actual person, resident manager, from the old to the new, lost a lot of traction, lost about 6 months of follow-up. But having gone through that, looking forward, that there should be continuity. So even if the person changes, the process is still there and the accounts aren't further delinquent.
And if I might add, Member Sakota, I think we're dealing with a J curve of profitability as the units are rehabbed, where for the next few quarters, as those 18 units go through the process of rehab, we will probably be operating at a deficit for all of that period. And then once they're leased out. But I share your concern, Member Sakota, and obviously this is part of why we've included it in the strategic plan to move toward divestment of this asset, because to echo your point, we are not a social service agency. And this property would be better handled by a social service agency or a affordable housing developer or management company. So,
And if I can add to what, Garrett has said, and Lindsay is also available for, for comments. Input. So, in the short term, I agree with Garrett that we have to pull all the levers with the management company because, despite the, the efforts of, Garrett, Lindsay and Marie from, Lindsay's staff, getting on and overseeing the management company, there's still things that fall short on a day-to-day basis that are not reflected in this very abbreviated dashboard, that we have to pull those levers and we have to work with them to try to improve their improve outcomes and improve their performance. So I'm not trying to color this and make it sound better than it is. I'm actually trying to balance to a little bit of the ramp up that they're going through after a year and a half, and also the things we need to do to pull those levers. In the long term, Member Sokoto, I mean, we have not, to echo Chair's comments, we have not abandoned the idea of a more long-term resolution to Honoka. One milestone event that's going to occur in 2026 in December is that the limited partnership will dissolve. The dissolution, while itself is doesn't contribute to the long-term disposition of this in a direct way. It does kind of help us without having the limited partner there to, consider disposition options. And we are internally working towards some kind of a way to address that dissolution and work with First of Mind Bank to consider a disposition. So that's still on the table, Member Sokoto.
Okay, just to follow up, I mean, one of my primary concerns is just from a cash flow basis, whether we have enough cash to weather out the year, and how to prepare for that going forward.
Go ahead.
If I could add, so I think, and that's a very good point, Member Sokoto, that we, Garrett and I have been kind of tracking. I think we thought by bringing on this property management company, they could get a handle on the financials, they could see the cash balance, they could, spread it out and spend what is a reasonable number. What we found in practice is that has been extremely difficult. So Garrett and we've had to kind of get a little bit more involved than I think we originally intended or thought. But now knowing where we are at a year and a half later, we recognize that we do have to kind of get involved and see this financial, statement all the way. So to your point, Member Evans, about, the delinquencies, the rent delinquencies and the auto pay. I know that when we changed property management companies, we also changed auto pay. So these folks who maybe had auto pay set up with the prior company now have to go to their bank, they have to change things. It's a horribly complicated process for someone who might be 80 years old and doesn't know how to use a computer. So that may be some of these delinquencies stretching back a year and a half. Maybe they just were never able to get, on auto pay. We're not sure. Again, that's something that we really shouldn't be involved in, checking on that minutia, but we will, because we recognize 150,000 is a big number. Why is it so big? So these are things I think moving forward that we are focused on, but yes, we recognize that long-term, we don't necessarily want to be doing that.
Sure, one more question.
Sorry,
Oh,
sorry, but having said all that, I think despite all that, serving this population in this project is important overall to, the state and to this population. So it is important. It's just, as everyone knows on this board, it's challenging for sure.
We go member Strikes and then member Evans.
Okay, yeah, so I understand the abbreviated nature of this report, but I don't think it paints the full picture, like, where's the expenses attributed to the common areas? I mean, is that gonna be?
No, it's all for the unit, so it's
Right,
mainly utilities and administrative cost. But
yes, where is the common area expenses? Like, cause that's gonna be, is that
No.
budgeted? Are there
No,
significant
it's-
repairs needed for that?
that's a whole separate, and that's the Honokaha AOAO.
Oh, okay,
That's the common area of this entire property and that, capital budget, maintenance fees that go into that entity,
yeah,
that's separate.
separate from
This
HCDA's.
is,
There is
Yeah,
CAM
partnership.
though. in
This is
the
just-
expenses. Right, the CAM is factored in.
Yeah.
So I think,
but we're talking about different things, we're talking about common area stuff, and that's not in
So-
these.
but the common areas are paid through the CAM that the limited partnership does pay. And it's a substantial amount.
Yeah,
As the owner of, 51% of the building, it's a large number in CAM. But the AOAO handles, the CAM for everybody and the escalations and all of
I
that.
think to member Strikes' question though, does the 571,000 expense include the senior rentals share of the CAM?
Yes,
Right,
Yes.
okay. Member Evans.
Is the building and this building all on the same parcel, or are they two separate parcels?
I can answer that. So it's, I think there's 4 TMKs. So brewery is one, it's also condominiumized, so that volunteer legal, the small little office is separated out, and then the elderly is one like single owner, and then all of the individual fee owners, I think there's 93, they each have their little condominiumized number. Yeah. So it is a little complicated with ownership and with CAM, because each of those entities does have a CAM associated with it, the 4 entities.
But when it comes to disposition, with those separate TMKs, you won't have to do a subdivision.
Probably.
I think that's correct.
Probably.
Thank you,
But-
Chair.
We haven't got to that point.
Yeah, I know.
Hopefully we will soon. Members, any other comments or questions? Thank you to the staff, not just for this update, but for all the work you're doing for Honokaha. And may God bless us and help us to best. We'll now accept testimony in the following order. Do we have any people pre-signed up for testimony?
No, you don't, Chair.
Do we have any persons present or online who wish to provide testimony?
None, Chair.
Okay, seeing no public testimony, members, any final comments or questions? Seeing none, thank you to the staff. We'll move now to agenda item number 3, or actually the next thing, which is directly related, which is an update by the HCDA staff on funds to be used for renovation and rehabilitation of rental units and other systems located in the Honokaha Senior Rental Project located at 545 Queen Street, Honolulu, Hawaii 96813.
Thank you, Chair. So this informational update is related to the prior Honokaha update. It focuses on the rehabilitation of rental units, not only the rental units that are unoccupied, but the rental units that are occupied. We were very fortunate to have access to a significant amount of funds, largely through the efforts of the governor, the governor's office, the chief of staff, and Deputy Director Campos at DHS. We signed a memorandum of agreement with DHS, also with Budget and Finance's concurrence for the use of those funds, whereby we will send them a matrix of all the worksheet of all the improvements that we plan to do for units and systems. and then get their approval on it. We will use money from our special funds to pay for those, procure a contractor, use our special funds to pay for it, and then seek reimbursement from DHS up to $1 million. This is work that we've chosen internally to do ourselves versus have the management company do for various reasons. We've been fortunate, Marie from our Lindsay staff, also Lindsay and Garrett. But a lot of it goes on, Marie for actually inventorying most of the 150, resident units for condition, for scope, and then come up with sort of a extent of the repairs that are needed for each. And as Garrett mentioned in his earlier report, the extent of the renovations vary by unit. Some will require minor renovations, some will require extensive renovations. Definitely all the unoccupied units will be done. The occupied units is a challenge. I mean, we're hoping that we can relocate tenants that are occupying units to fix their units, but surprisingly, not all residents want to even relocate temporarily, but we're gonna try our best. The other parts of the funds are gonna be used, whatever's remaining is to maybe address some systems that that service the senior side. These are the things that maybe have been the source of some concerns among the residents. But the intent is to use all of those funds and then kind of address what I think is really sort of the elephant in the room when it talks about the Potoka, senior rental finances is we need to fix these units up so we can rent it out, tenant them, and then start to generate income from those. That's what Garrett mentioned as the short-term objective. But again, thank you to Marie for doing the inventory, Lindsay and Garrett, and also for the governor's office, chief of staff and Deputy Director Campos and others who were very instrumental, on for getting this done. So just want to thank them, Chair.
Thank you, Director Nakamoto. Members, any comments or questions for Director or the staff? Seeing no question. Oh,
Can I say
please.
one thing, just to circle back to member Sakota on the previous item. The financials do reflect like an overall decrease in available cash. With the rentals coming in, it'll stabilize operationally day to day. We have not been saving or spending on those occupied units and keeping them in, average condition. These funds will bring those units that, might have some defects, repairs, and it will correct all of those. So that'll help stabilize the overall cash flow.
Great. Member
Thank you,
Sakota.
Garrett. Thank you, Garrett.
Okay, seeing no comments or questions from board members, we'll move now to public testimony. Do we have any persons pre-signed up for testimony? Any persons present or online who wish to provide testimony?
None, Chair.
Seeing none, we will close public testimony. Members, any final comments or questions? Seeing none, we'll move to an update by the HCDA staff on the proposed acquisition by HCDA of that certain vacant parcel of land located within the HCDA's Kakaako Community Development District, identified by Oahu Tax Map Key number 2-1-030012 with a postal address of 586 South Street, Honolulu, Hawaii 96813, 586 South Street parcel, for the purpose of acquiring said parcel for the development of either supportive housing or affordable housing. Mr. Craig Nakamoto, Executive Director, will now present the update.
Thank you, Chair. This update and proposed acquisition is part of our efforts in the strategic plan to find innovative ways to develop more housing, and is also a policy policy initiative by legislators for the district. So we closed on the acquisition of 586 South Street. It's a vacant lot located at South and Halekawila for the development of supportive housing or affordable housing. We closed on April 29th. And so we own the property. We also, in connection with supportive housing in the HB 300, the state budget, we have funding 34 million over 2 years for plan, design, and construction of this supportive housing. And so that is the next step for this, to find a developer to build supportive housing. The other activities that we're doing as follow-up to the acquisition is we're gonna use some of that, those funds that were for the acquisition of the property, also to do a archaeological inventory survey for the property, do a archaeological monitoring plan. And all of this is to prepare and do the necessary studies in preparation for getting a developer. So just wanted to thank Deepak, Garrett, and Lindsay for their help in getting this acquisition and getting it closed.
Perfect.
And we'll provide more updates later as we go along. Probably at the next meeting, Chair will maybe present an update on how we intend to seek a developer. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Director Nakamoto. Members, comments or questions about the 586 South Street parcel? Seeing no board comments or questions, we'll move to public testimony. Do we have any persons pre-signed up for testimony? Any persons present or online who wish to provide testimony? Seeing none, we'll close public testimony. Members, any comments or questions? Just briefly offer thank you to the staff for closing on this so quickly. Great to have another parcel that can be used for affordable housing development right in the urban core.
Thank you.
Especially a parcel that has been vacant and unused for so long. Moving now to agenda item number 4, the report of the executive director. These are the monthly report and other status reports, including approved permit hearings that did not require HRS 206E-5.6 public hearings. Executive Director Nakamoto will now provide his monthly report.
Thank you, Chair. The Executive Director report is in tab 5 of your packets. So I wanted to go over some of the highlights. Under Roman numeral 1, developments under construction, also wanted to add under that Aaliyah has also started construction. That was omitted from that list. Going down to the Kolawala Park improvements and the dog park. So, the dog park has so far been a little bit challenging to maintain. Fortunately, Lindsay, Jason, and Alicia have really done a lot to do the maintenance. We've had also, as you may have saw reported on the news the other day, there's been a lot of vandalism at the park. I don't know, vandalism meaning we've had the irrigation timer box broken into, the gate that leads to the dog parks have been vandalized 1 or 2 times. There have been sprinkler heads that have been ripped out. I don't think it's dogs doing that. I think it's somebody ripping those things out. And then there's other things that have been going on at the park that we need to address, and it's costing money, time, and effort on our part to fix those things. And as I reported on the news, these are not just pranks, these are crimes. And we are considering some steps. At every incident of vandalism, Lindsay and her team are reporting it to the police to create a record. I have talked to the district commander to let him know that these vandalism is occurring and to be on the watch for it. We have told our security team to, for heightened awareness of these acts of vandalism. They're roving patrol, so they can't be there all the time, but to make them aware. The other thing we're considering doing is possibly, installing surveillance cameras at this location. That has a lot of challenges too with surveillance cameras and who's gonna monitor it, all that kind of stuff. But, maybe that's at least a deterrent. And I've said this on, in the TV report that if the perpetrator is found, I mean, definitely we're gonna push for prosecution of these crimes. They're not crimes, they're really crimes against people who use the dog parks. So in the short term, on page 2 of the ED report, we've decided that we're gonna close the large dog park from May 12th to June 9th. Signage has been put up by Lindsay's staff. And we're gonna do that to allow the grass to kind of regrow a little bit. We're gonna try to fix the gate during that time. Also try to, just mostly rehabilitate the grass. And it's probably something that we're gonna do on a regular periodic basis in the future. That is, close one part of the park, small or large dog park, for maybe a couple of weeks, and then reopen it, close the other side for a couple of weeks during the year. Because I think our goal is to try to keep the grass growing, maintained, and in good condition. Because alternatives to that are, one, maybe not as desirable, like artificial turf, not as desirable and also costly to put in. So Lindsay and her team, especially, Jason, have been really working hard with our landscaper to keep the grass growing. So the next step is probably to seed it and then fertilize it, and hopefully it'll grow out and fix those problems. Good for questions on that. The other item that I wanted to bring your attention to is in April, Kanoa Winds completed the installation of the vertical wind turbine at Lot C, where next to the entrepreneurs sandbox. So that is operational. It's not generating any electricity, but it is the data from that wind speed amount of generation is being used by Kanoa Winds for research purposes. So just want to thank the board for this support of that project. So if you go by there, it's up and running. That's all I have on the highlights, Chair. Open for questions.
Thank you, Director. Member questions and comments. We'll go to Member Sakota first.
Hi, Craig. How has the community response been to the dog park vandalism?
I haven't talked to, a lot of people about it, but the few people I've talked to, they're definitely incensed about it, and they don't understand why, why someone would do that. So they're very much incensed about it, Member Sakota.
Okay. I get the sense that, the best kind of policing is community policing, when everybody's looking at and going, hey, what's that guy doing there at, 2 a.m. or whatever. So if we can get that going, that would be great, I think. But otherwise, the dog park looks great. I think a lot of happy people walking around.
Yeah. And just a couple people we've spoken to, the sort of key stakeholders and supporters of the dog park, are also supportive, Member Sakota, of this closure. I thought I would get some negative pushback about it, but at least a couple key stakeholders have supported it, and they also support periodic closures to, maintain the grass. So that's promising. That's promising.
Great.
We'll let the board know, in the future, what happens with this dog park. I mean, if there's further acts of vandalism, we might have to take more sort of draconian measures on this if we can't stop this vandalism.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Member Sakota.
Thank you. Secretary Lipstone.
Yeah, mahalo for that update on the park. Craig, I saw you on the news yesterday. You look good. And I agree with Member Sakota about community policing. I've cared for a place at Kapolei Regional Park since 2008, and it's the same thing. The water, the irrigation gets broken after, fix it, it's just this cycle, and it has not gotten better, I'm sorry to say, but community policing has helped, and just acknowledging that it's gonna happen. So you're not so crushed, because I know how crushing and infuriating it is. And my heart was really, it was really heavy yesterday in the news coverage, and in hearing that, the possible closure of the dog park, which I hope doesn't happen, because if it does, then, the crime wins. But I think, just knowing it's gonna happen, and we just gotta keep fixing it and get the community involved, and hopefully it lessens it. But there's a mental health issue on the streets. And I think those who break these things, many of them don't know what they're doing. Until that is remedied, this is gonna continue. But I do like the idea of closing it for a portion to let the grass grow back, because that really helps. But unfortunately, as you yourself said, Craig, it's gonna keep happening. But just acknowledging it and keep going. And I'm really sorry that this is happening. It's such a beautiful, beautiful park, and a great service to the community.
Thank you, Secretary Lidstone, for those words. And, weird way, I guess I'm now a little bit comforted that it's not just happening to us. Yeah, I hope it doesn't come to something more drastic. Community policing is a good idea. I'll reach out to my contact at community policing, not just a district commander, but there was another person that was doing community policing for Kakaako. So I'll see if they can help with this, and we'll keep the board informed. And try to see what I think it's just, we gotta keep fixing it, but hopefully this stops at some point. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Lidstone. Thank you, Director. Members, any other comments or questions? Member Strites.
I have a couple of questions on your report. So going back to the dog park, I'm encouraged to see your approach in, documenting the vandalism with the police to establish a record. It would be helpful too, I'm not sure if you are doing this, to see if any patterns emerge, like, that is happening at certain times of the day. We'll try and take that into account, and maybe your response to addressing it as well outside of the police department. I was also wondering, we're talking about community policing, if there's ever any discussions about forming like some sort of friends of the park for both like that security as well as like maintenance potentially.
Yeah, maybe the first question first. I think it's hard to know, I think without a surveillance camera set up, when these, acts of vandalism occur. I mean, we think that they're occurring, after the park, after the dog park closed, which is 10 o'clock at night. But exactly when they're happening, it's hard. I haven't seen any kind of pattern in these. It seems kind of random. But we'll note that we have considered, some kind of like adopt a park. I know there would be community members that would be willing to form that kind of group to adopt a park, and so that and maybe we'll consider that. I think even with that, the maintenance responsibility and is still gonna be on the agency to do, but maybe part of their responsibilities could be to kind of, walk around the park after hours, or, kind of like a watch group. But we'll consider those ideas. They're good ideas, members.
Okay, good to hear. My other questions had to do with the wind turbine. I was wondering if there's any talk about like a board tour of that, or even if there's like any public showings or outreach.
Sure. I mean, I can arrange with Kanoa Winds to do a kind of a board tour. So what we have to do is we just make sure we're compliant with sunshine law. So I can set that up, maybe a few members at a time.
Okay.
Can definitely do that. And then we'll get when we get to the Kalilo report, I'll report on the other one. But,
Okay.
yeah, but And then I think, have they put up signage, Lindsay?
They should have an LCD screen actually, which is locked up. I made sure to say lots of locks. But that has the generation information, real-time data. So it should be, I haven't seen it. It wasn't up when, oh, it's not up yet. They will have a screen up eventually. That'll have some pretty cool data.
Thank you, Member Shea.
Thank you, Member Straits. Members, any other comments or questions? Being none, we'll move to public testimony. Do we have any persons pre-signed up for testimony? Do we have any persons present or online who wish to provide testimony? Seeing none, we'll close public testimony. Members, any other final comments or questions before we move to adjourn the meeting? Seeing none, we'll move to adjourn this Kakaako Authority meeting. The next meeting will be the General Authority meeting at 10 a.m. So thank you to those who joined us on Zoom or in person, especially our Kakaako community board members. This concludes our business for today. The meeting is adjourned. The time is 9:46 a.m.
Thank you, Chair.